Hi, I'm Jim Shaw from LexMedia and the Colonial Times magazine. It's Friday, May 8th. We're here for our update, our Friday update. Today, we're fortunate to have with us Joe Pato, a member of the Lexington Select Board. Joe, thanks for being with us today.
Glad to be here.
Great. Let's open up. We normally open this up with the sort of the COVID number of the day. Do you know that number today?
Today's reported number is 280.
280.
So continues to go up, but it's going up more slowly.
Right. Well, that's a good thing. I know it was jumping up there considerably for a while, so it does, and that seems to be a trend that's going on in the state too. So that's a good thing. We should probably take this time to remind people, and not to so much assess, but I know that on Wednesday the governor's mandatory mask order went into effect. And I think a lot of people have questions and concerns about what does that actually mean? You know, do I absolutely have to wear a mask? You know, my feeling is the rule of thumb is put the mask on. It's required, but you know, there are some exceptions for people with certain illnesses and such. And I don't even know, I'm not entirely certain of the rule if you're not going to be near anybody, if you're like walking on the sidewalk in front of your house kind of thing. So what are you hearing about that? And so far, is it your opinion that people are complying?
Well, a lot of questions there.
Yes.
It starts with, it is mandatory for everyone age 2 and older to wear a mask when in public spaces where you can't reasonably provide social distancing. So if you are likely to come in contact with someone else in less than 6 feet or so. But your take on it is just wear it is probably the right thing to do. Now, there are people who have some sort of condition, an illness, an inability to have something on their face, and they're exempted. They don't have to be wearing a mask. And one of the things that the town asks our residents is, don't make assumptions about why someone might not have it. Keep your distance. And for all of us who can wear one, just wear it. One of the things to remember about masks is it is really helping the people around you, because if you sneeze, you cough, it is going to control where the particulates go, the droplets, so that it makes that 6-foot radius actually more effective if you're wearing a mask. You know, there are times when it's awkward, but you should still wear it. If you're out bicycling, wear it. If you're out for a walk, wear it.
Right.
Certainly if you're walking in to pick up something at a restaurant for takeout food or something like that, or you're going into the supermarkets, you have to wear the mask. Right.
Convenience stores, gas pumps. I mean, because you're pretty close proximity, and people who are using gas pumps should be wearing gloves as well.
That's right. And have some hand sanitizer with you to clean off after you use.
Well, it's interesting too. I was having a conversation with Chief Core, the Lexington Police Department, excuse me, and you know, he's concerned about the overzealousness of enforcement and all that, and he's more interested at this point in education and getting people to understand why it's important to do this. You know, reluctant to just sort of willy-nilly hand out you know, citations and tickets and all of that. But he was also concerned that you know, people have and hopefully they'll slow down on this, but engage other people who are not wearing masks, you know, sort of inappropriately going up to them and saying you should have a mask on. It creates other issues and other problems, and I know he's concerned about that. He's hoping people will sort of, you know, let better judgment prevail in situations like that, and certainly don't pick up the phone and call 911 unless it's an absolute emergency.
That's right. I mean, you can contact the police department, but please don't use 911 for something like this. Let them know through the business number if there's an issue, but don't take the emergency line away from some other event which could be life-threatening. It's hard. I understand the frustration that people feel when they walk around and run into people without I do a lot of walking, as you know.
Right.
And my experience is that I've been seeing more and more people wearing them. Occasionally, at a distance, I'll see that someone has dropped their mask, so to be a little more comfortable, and then as approach, they tie it back up. If you feel that need, I try to leave mine on just so that I'm not touching it and moving around.
Right.
If you feel that need, that's certainly better than choosing not to wear.
Right. And I noticed, interestingly, because I do the same thing. I'm an observer of people, and I noticed that most people now are complying. Some people are not in certain situations, and I do notice that people are wearing them while they're driving alone in their vehicles, and that could be a problem too. So people need to be smart about how they're using their mask. It's not necessarily, it's not. I don't think it's required. In fact, I think it's discouraged for people to use them while they're driving their vehicles in case they hyperventilate or do something that, it may cause a problem. What's your take on that?
So I'm not really aware of the issues. I will at times wear it when I'm driving short distance. I don't drive very much these days. But
I know.
and it's more of a just, I put it on before leaving the house and it's just on. And I'm not going to be wearing it for particularly long when I'm in the car.
I guess it's up to people to be the judge of that themselves. If they feel like it's a problem, then, if they're in a vehicle alone, then,
Right. You can certainly tie up after, when you're getting ready to leave the car. But there are a lot of other things we can talk about that
absolutely.
are, in some ways more exciting and uplifting. For example, today is May 8th, and you may or may not remember that this is the 75th anniversary of Victory in Europe Day, the end of World War II in Europe. This is the day that Germany provided its unconditional surrender to the Allies. And in Lexington, we have had a wonderful grassroots committee of residents put together all these programs. They've been working for over a year. I've attended a lot of their meetings. They really have dug into who were the residents of Lexington who fell in the war, who were the people who participated, gathering histories and stories from the family members, relics of the experience, including those who served at home or who gathered gum wrappers to get the tinfoil off of them. All of those activities that for my generation are only things I read about. But we still have some members of that generation in town, and they have been incredibly generous in sharing their experience. So the sad thing is that there were all these in-person activities planned, and some of them have been, we passed the dates on a few of them, like today, but they've been replaced with online activities. So this evening at 7 p.m., there is a Zoom session for this remembrance. The information on it is available on the town's homepage in the news section. It'll be, it's like the fourth item down on the right of the columns, but look for it. And if you have the time, join it, because I think that I've seen some of the videos that this group has produced. I know the heart that's been poured into this work by these residents, and it's incredibly moving.
Well, I can say LexMedia has partnered up with the group, working closely with George Gamoda and his team. And so has the Colonial Times. I mean, every month for the last several months, we've been providing multiple pages of sort of publicity of all of this stuff. In the beginning, trying to identify people that they could. That was a bit of a challenge, getting the names of people who served, and then how to contact them if they were still alive. And there are some extraordinary stories. There's absolutely no question about it. So we do encourage people to take the time to go up. And as I mentioned before, we actually started recording our meeting. I know Christine from the Cary Library sent out something today about getting access to. There are a couple of websites where you can actually go on and see free of charge some World War II era movies or movies about World War II. Yeah. Right.
The library has been as they always are, a wonderful partner in these kinds of activities, and are providing information on how to access all sorts of materials that are relevant to the commemoration and to the experience. So that information is available on the library website, and if you can't find it, send a request in to ask one of the librarians. They're always happy to satisfy a request for information.
They're the nicest group of people, and they're so accommodating.
Yep.
I can't say enough about Cary Library and the people there. They really love what they do, and it shows.
Absolutely, and the community loves them back, which is a wonderful thing. So we'll move on to something else.
Well, no, I wanted to take one opportunity just to remember somebody who was important to me personally, a fellow named REO Piero. I don't know if you remember REO, but REO grew up on Bow Street. He was born in that house, a tiny little house on Bow Street, and he lived to be just about 100 years old. I think he just had turned 100 when he passed away. And I remember one time reading the story on the internet. I came across the story about a fellow, a tank sergeant with the 3rd Armored Division during the Battle of the Bulge. His commander was killed, and he had, as a sergeant, had to step up and lead these tanks into the battle. And of course, the 3rd Armored Division was heavily credited with giving the support and cover that they needed at the Battle of the Bulge. So they mentioned the guy's name, REO Piero, and I said to myself, there can't be two REO Pieros. The fellow earned a Silver Star for what he did there. So I called him up. I said, REO, I'm reading this story about a guy named REO Piero who was at the Battle of the Bulge. Did you fight at the Battle of the Bulge? He says, yes, I did. I was in the 3rd Armored Tank Division. It was him. It was an extraordinary story. And, I'm constantly amazed. The folks, I don't know if you remember the book that was published up at the at Brookhaven.
Yes.
People telling their personal stories of things that they experienced during the World War II. An extraordinary read, and it just drives the point home that so many people that every day, when you read these extraordinary things that they had to do in battle, you think to yourself, wow, this is stuff that they make movies about. And here, and I never even knew this, and REO was somebody I knew extremely well, and he never wore it on his sleeve. He every year would go to the veterans events and all of that, and I never knew this about him. Anyway, so I just wanted to pay homage to my late friend REO Piero and encourage people to take the time to learn about the others that are still with us. And if you have an occasion to, say hello to them and thank them.
They're a great thing to do.
Yeah. So you were talking about some other great things that are going on.
Yeah, there are a few other things just to highlight. One thing that's happened today is the Pine Meadows Golf Course has reopened. It opened this morning at 7 a.m. But you do need to make reservations to go there. And the reservations, I believe, are 7 days in advance. The information is on the website. You can get it again from the town's webpage. I think it's on the front page, but it's certainly on the COVID-19 page.
Right.
So you need to make reservations in advance. You can't congregate. There are no golf carts to be used. You have to walk. And you need to practice social distance at all times, wear a mask. Essentially, you have to follow the state guidelines for being in public. So we hope that it is an outlet for people to be able to get out, get air, exercise a little bit, and behave responsibly. I know we've had issues with some of our playing fields and things like that where people have not heeded the warnings. This is a little more structured, I hope, and we'll see how it goes. But the state did allow for golf courses to open up, and Pine Meadows is following that.
It'll be an interesting test. It'll be an interesting test to see how people begin to acclimate to, sort of returning back to some sense of normalcy. I mean, like you say, there are going to be a lot of conditions placed on people who go out there, but the good news is it's happening.
Right.
It's just one example of, like, little by little, I think we'll begin to see some less restrictive requirements.
Right, and in these kind of activities where you can do them and with a few other people, but yet keep that distance, those are great.
Yeah.
Many of you know that I'm a sailor and I race sailboats in the summertime, and I've written off the season because our cockpit is way too small for 3 people to be able to not be in close contact, which is disappointing. But
Yeah.
but where there is an activity that opens up that you can,
You'll get back out there. I didn't realize, I knew that you had done some of that. I guess I'm gonna have to start calling you Skipper, I think. I didn't realize that you did that, but that's wonderful. Let me ask you about some other things. I know that you were involved with the robotics event that was going on, the competition. Did you call it Lex Packs?
Lex Hack.
Lex Hack, right.
Yeah, so I talked about this a little bit a few weeks ago before it happened, as we were making it known to students that they could participate. And this was open to kindergarten through high school. Mostly it was Lexington students, but it was open to a few neighboring communities. And there were a few students from other locations that participated. The competition took place the last weekend of April, so just over a week ago now. And then the competition was specifying a project that addressed COVID-19 issues in the community. So doing a creative brainstorm on what problems existed, why they were important, and what solutions might be in place. And depending on your age, kids came up with all sorts of different things, either just an idea and drawings, or your implementations with hardware and software doing things. There was a large group of kids who participated. Some were as individuals, others as small groups. This past weekend, the judges, of which I was one, went through the project, and because we're competitive, gave out a first place award in each division. But as a judge, I was a judge for the high school division, and I've been a judge in science fairs for many years, and I'll tell you, it is so impressive to see the degree of thoughtfulness, creativity that goes into these projects. And unlike a science fair where the students are able to present to you in person, for this they had to do it, or whatever it was, build the project, and then create a presentation, a video presentation. So there was both the marketing arm of how do you make a presentation that is compelling, gets to the point in 2 minutes. So there were, again, all of the projects deserved accolades. I was incredibly impressed. But you did see that sometimes there was a project that wasn't quite as technical as another one, but where the students really had developed the messaging, had done the research, and explained why is this a problem and how does this solution help. And I'll say that the top-ranked projects sort of spread amongst a really nifty technical solution, like using an X-ray model of the lungs to try to detect COVID-19, which is not something I would expect that a high school student be doing, right. To an app that runs on your smartphone that tells you ways that you can help local businesses. So restaurants, how to go and get, who's providing curbside, et cetera, but not just the takeout food, but here's where they're collecting contributions for their staff. Here's the businesses in your neighborhood that are closed but are doing mail order or online ordering, which we have several retailers doing that in town. And it's so it was really creative, and it provided a really nice presentation of how to go about doing it and then doing it. So it ranged from a very social description of the problem and with a solution to a very technical examination. Right. And I just love these. So every opportunity, and I only really dug into the high school project, but I heard the descriptions of the presentations from Dr. Hackett, for example, at the elementary level, and what the kids were doing at age 5 and up was just.
I can only imagine. I bet it was. I grew up here in Lexington, and I remember, some of my science teachers. In fact, one of my science teachers owns Cricket's Flowers with his daughter in Lexington. So he's a retired science teacher, and he taught science his entire time, and he worked his entire career in Lexington. But he, you know, you remember these things, but I have to tell you, I don't remember the depth of you know, what these kids are doing now versus what we did then. So it's definitely a different time.
Right, but it's great. And I'm going to move on to one other thing just to round out the afternoon.
Sure.
This week is Composting Awareness Week. And we have a very active group of residents, the Lexington Green Teams, the Sustainable Lexington's Trash Reduction Working Group, Task Force, and a variety of other groups like GWAC, the Global Warming Awareness Coalition. But they're putting together all sorts of presentations and activities during this Composting Awareness Week. I don't know if you know, but we have around 1,000 households that have signed up for a paid curbside compost pickup service in town. You have the green little small, you know, maybe 2 foot tall trash barrels.
I've seen them. Yeah, I have seen them.
So we have about 1,000 households doing that, but we have about another 600 households, I think, that are doing backyard composting. And one of the things the town is looking at is, can we extend that level of composting to almost all households, get people to participate in at least the curbside portion.
Do they do composting at Hartwell Avenue?
Yeah, I was just about to say, and of course we have the composting for lawn clippings and waste. But a lot of the composting, I'm talking the backyard and the curbside, that's really about taking your organic waste from food waste, soiled paper napkins or towels, and as well as all sorts of foods, from meats to vegetables to bone. That's taken into a commercial composting facility where the temperatures get high enough that really takes all that down. And it's I've been doing it for about 1.5 years, and my garbage output has decreased by half.
Wow.
Which is really good because you know, reduces costs for the town in
Sure does.
Tipping costs for disposal of the of solid waste.
I know, and that is expensive. There's no question about it.
It is, and the composting generates organic fertilizer and use, which it's really a all-around good thing for the environment and for the community.
Well, we encourage people to
it's on the website. Sorry.
Good. No, that's what I was going to say. We
town.
encourage people to look into it, and I was going to ask you how they do it. So they can go onto the town website?
Right. Again, it's on the front page, the news block. It's one of the first elements, and it describes Compost Awareness Week, which is, this is the week where it started on, I think, Sunday, and it goes through the weekend.
Well, good. Well, we encourage people to look into that and get more active with it. So, well, listen, Joe, thanks so much for being with us. It's, you know, I think we're in for kind of a crazy 24 hours worth of weather here. It started off as a beautiful sunny day. It's going to get warmer. Then I understand it's going to get cloudy, rainy, with the possibility of some snow in the Worcester Hills. So it's like we're experiencing 4 seasons in one day.
Absolutely.
So we'll see what happens, but I think Sunday looks like it's going to be okay for Mother's Day. So I want to take this opportunity to wish all the moms out there a happy Mother's Day, especially to my lovely bride, Laurie, and to everyone else. So please give my best to Jerry, and I wish you continued good health and safety.
And to you as well.
All right. Thanks, Joe.